But if you didn't watch this video, to give you the main gist of it, of what happened here, this is the first time the Method Guild collapsed of the, like, 3 times that has happened. This was the first time it collapsed. Because a lot of people were asking in the comment section, why wasn't Josh mentioned? Which, for anybody who knows or familiar with the history of the World of Warcraft raiding situation, will know what I'm referring to. And that's because that was the second time. It is something we will cover in the future, but obviously that requires a lot more sensitivity and difficulty. But it is something we do want to cover at some point. Because a lot of people are like, why aren't you talking about that? It's like, because that was actually way later, like years later, that actually happened. This was the first time. So what actually happened here, it was difficult for us. This was the feedback we got from Nupps and Bex, actually, who previewed this video before it went public, is the weight of what happened here is hard to convey to the audience. But the general idea is if you woke up tomorrow and all of Team Liquid had left the guild, or all of Team Echo had just left the guild, they were all gone. That's what happened. So if you were into raiding in World of Warcraft, and certainly the Race to World First, that's what happened. Is we woke up that day and everybody was gone. Like, the whole guild had just disappeared. Even though they were the reigning champions, all that kind of stuff. That's how it went down, is we just woke up as the public looking in, and we're like, what the fuck has happened? Like, everybody had left the guild. They had all abandoned the guild. So it was interesting. It's impressive how different you look at this video versus our trial in Method flashback. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I will be a big fat boy one day. Again, that is my natural comfort zone, is to be a tubby bastard. Do you remember the April 1st joke with Nihilum disband back in BC? I do. Yeah, I remember these things. I absolutely do. But that's the weight of what happened here, which is why it was pivotal, because this is also a pivotal moment, because this was the real beginnings of the Race to World First. Which I found very interesting, especially when we had to scroll, but me and Chris had to sit here and go back through Facebook years to find certain posts. I think the biggest thing for the Race to World First is the chapter after this with Sloot and Nagura making Future. Future is on our list. Yeah, Future is on our list. I've got a list of, like, what I consider to be the most historical moments in the Race to World First. And it's actually painting quite the tapestry. It's something me and Chris have talked about. I know not everybody is super into this stuff. I am. I find where we are now compared to where it started, and having been there for the whole journey, really interesting to reach the point where it's now a major esport, you know, with millions of dollars involved, as to where it came from. So much of our rating stream does Ode to Future. Yeah, that's a debate I think you could have. That's a debate you think you could have. Let's get started with this anyway. Does he start with hello guys, Sko here, the classic one?
Hey guys, Sko here, and Preach has just released a video here called The First Fall of Method, Legacy of WoW. So I thought I'd watch it and give my own thoughts, see what he's saying about this.
He's been doing that
this whole thing.
Since
One of the most
2013.
startling moments in raiding history took place.
Right,
over the course of 24 hours. The champions, the reigning, dominant, multi-year heroes Method, lost practically their entire roster.
Yeah, to be clear, I did not reach out to Sko about this one, because I have spoken to... About this video, I didn't talk to Sko directly about this one, purely because me and Scott had talked about this a lot over the years, like when this happened. We had talked about it many, many times, so I knew his opinions on it at the time, if that makes sense.
Wait. Okay, let's see. Let's see the roster. I guess this is the roster that was probably taken from, like, the Archimon kill, which was the most recent World First that we had before the Serenity split happened. Lots of old names here, guys.
Yeah.
Actually, a few that I can't remember. I can't remember Gaunt.
Oh, how sad, dude, to be forgotten. Who the fuck is Gaunt? That sucks so badly. Oh, that sucks so badly. Yeah, it's weird. It sucks, man. You're part of a world first kill and your guildmaster doesn't remember you. But it does happen. There are lots of people I played with that I just don't remember anymore. But yeah, some names that are still around. Obviously, Lankvist. Anybody know who Lankvist is? I would imagine some of you do, who's still playing today. Perfecto, Roger Brown, Ashvale, who joined our guild, played with Ashvale in Bald, Fat and Ugly, came our way. The legend himself is Fragnance. Yes, that is Jimmy. That is Jimmy all the way back then. Noxy, who was my template for playing Rogue. Infi, one of the nicest people in the world. In a time when a lot of the Method Guild were very suspicious of why I was part of the guild, Infi was one of the absolute nicest people in the world and totally got it and understood what was going on. I really like Infi. Obviously, Xalia Ken, many people know about him. Sparkugs, absolute these are some absolute raiding legends in this room, especially Kuznem. Like, you had no idea that Ash was in Method? Yeah, Ash was world first.
Let's see the rest. Yeah. So
Obviously,
who's still playing today? Xalia. Viklan's still playing, just not in any of the Race to World First
he's still
guilds.
playing. Viklan's still playing.
Yeah. Just Wait still does some stuff. Roger Brown, of course. That's it, actually. Or not.
Sko does not know that Lanquist is Jimmy. That's kind of funny. He's in your guild, Scott.
Not that many players still playing, guys, huh? One. I guess I'm still.
He's a member of Method today.
1, 2.
I'm pretty sure Jimmy's in Method
4,
now, right?
5?
Yeah, I think so.
Five players still involved.
That's kind of funny.
Barak was a really good healer, actually.
Practically their entire roster just
Whoosh,
vanished.
it did.
Not as good as
Today, ladies
Xalia,
and
though.
gentlemen, we're going to take you on a journey of one of the most
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
pivotal
Jimmy's still in
moments
Method. Let's skip on my bits.
They were the champions. There was nowhere else to go. Well, unfortunately,
We're changing
as we
this
have proven
background. I don't
many,
like it.
many
There's too much
times in this
piss
series,
yellow in this
being
background.
at the very high-end mythic raiding guild, whatever, does not make you immune to the same problems that happen in your normal, casual,
I'm really curious
friendly
as to what
raiding
Scott has to
guild
say.
as
I know
well.
he disagrees with me
You
on
see,
certain things.
all these things have one thing in common. They're full of people.
Yeah.
And people have all kinds of opinions.
Yeah, too much
and all
yellow. We're going to
kinds of
build
things.
another set in
That
the
is
background.
true, actually, guys. There's a lot to be said about managing a WoW guild at any level. Like, obviously, back in the day, it was like 40-man raiding. So you had, like, what, 50, 60 people in the guild, including, like, a ton of, like, casuals and whatnot as well.
Yep.
But, you know, over time, obviously, the raid size has dropped, but the management
Yeah, I'm
required
dropping the shirt. It's too big for me
has
now,
obviously moved up
unfortunately.
a lot as the competition's gotten a lot tougher and tougher.
That shirt, even though it
And,
still looks baggy, is pinned
yeah,
behind
I mean,
me.
As you can imagine, when you're playing with some of the best players
Me
in
and
the
Chris
world,
had to pin it. It's
you know,
so
there's
huge
a
on
lot
me
of
now.
interesting personalities over the years, a lot of egos. So yeah, it's people management skills for like guild leaders and raid leaders and whatnot. And it's like, yeah, they probably have pretty good people management skills.
I don't think there's enough credit given to how hard it is to manage personalities in a guild. Certainly a competitive environment. I really don't. Like, you could argue one of the problems with Serenity was the just lack of people management, but I don't think that was a primary cause. That's why I didn't include it. But it's... Everybody I've played with at the high end, especially old-timers, were all capable of running a guild and none of them wanted to do it. And the entire reason they didn't want to do it is nobody likes dealing with personalities that much. It's just not worth your time. It's too much effort. We would rather the guild die than one of us actually take up the mantle of trying to manage people. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. It's a sad reality is managing a guild is like 20% people showing up and actually performing, 80% dealing with personalities and trying to coordinate them and deal with their real life problems. All that bullshit, their differing opinions. I mean, anybody who's ever run a raid or run a guild, there is no doubt you've had a whisper from people who are just straight being awful about other players. Like, bitching about them in a really severe way. Like, this guy's just a complete piece of shit. We need to get rid of him. We need to do this, this, and this. And then you'll get a whisper from somebody else, and then that person fucks up. And now they're like, well, wait a minute, that person fucked up on Tuesday, like, and now he's giving me shit. Like, it's just never ending. It never stops. And trying to corral all those people whose only unifying goal is the want to kill bosses. That's it. That's the only thing that really ties them together on a guild-wide scale. It's so hard. I can't imagine how hard it is to manage players. I was losing my mind because I have zero tolerance for it. When I was doing it in the Burning Crusade, Nupps was there. You'll remember. Like, when I was managing the guild in the Burning Crusade and all the way through till Cataclysm, I was so done with it by that point. I was just like, I was exhausted. I didn't even want to log in anymore. I could not be fucking bothered.
That's probably quite transferable, actually, as well. Like, I remember when I applied for, like, my first internship, like, at university, to General
Full
Electric,
Furbo.
I included my World of Warcraft Guildmaster experience on my CV, and we actually did talk about it a little bit.
That's really interesting. This used to be a meme of people including guild management in their CVs for real world jobs. I think it's certainly in 2025, this is even more okay. I think this is fine. I think gaming is now so widespread and so popular that the idea of managing a team, even in the online gaming space, is actually something there's a chance people, unless you had some super old timer. Yeah, now, it does depend on the job, but if you're looking for a management role, I actually think this is something you could put down. Is that certainly if your team has had success, and you pull the bits out that you don't go like, oh, well, I managed a transmog farm or anything like that. But I've had a lot of experience managing people. You put Pokemon Judge of Mine, it always gets me an interview. Yeah. I think this is something you could absolutely include on a CV now. I include it in my senior job applications, just obliquely worded. Well, it's what are you pulling out of what you did? It's like, yes, it's in the game space, but I'm still managing people. I'm organizing people. I'm delegating to people. I'm dividing up, tasks and roles.
Which was fun.
The landscape was changing. Now you guys the microphone changed as well. Could you tell? Compared to what's happening these days.
True.
Sko posted in 2015. WoW raiding competition had become a 2-horse race for a while. The irony. The irony.
And if you guys remember as well, Paragon were swapping to 10-man as well, right? So there wasn't actually going to be like some huge competition for us, I guess you could say, moving into the next expansion after Archimond. So raiding was actually becoming, a little less competitive, I guess you could say, because we've been quite dominant Paragon, for a while with some of our world first kills. And Paragon went kind of on the decline, I guess you could say, like they were kind of disappearing. Basically because Paragon was a Finnish only guild, and so they obviously found it quite hard to continue to recruit Finnish only players. As people start getting older, as people start finishing university,
so sad the loss of Paragon,
get a job or whatever. And this actually kind of probably leads into some of the stuff we're going to talk about in this video, actually, because one of the core reasons, obviously, that I wanted to what do you want to call it, like try and convert Method from just a World of Warcraft guild into something more, was to actually ensure that Method would still be around in the future, because obviously we're faced with the same issues, right? Like we play with these players who have been students or whatever, then if there's not anything more to help support them, then obviously they have to stop playing the game as well at some point, right? And for me, I created Method back in 2005. So at this point in time, this video is being talked about. This is 2015. So that's 10 years, guys. So Method was like my whole life, I guess you could say, outside of everything else that's going on. So my entire passion, I guess you could say, my baby. So I started Method in the last year of secondary school, so when I was like 17, I think, and then I did 2 university degrees for 7 years, just all the time, still playing and building Method, I guess you could say, working with the guild and everything. And then I started working full-time as a financial analyst, and I kept working full-time while still building Method.
At 15.
But Method was like my passion, right? Method was the thing I cared
about.
There's a
lot of Sko's made some bad decisions for sure, and there's a lot of people who don't like Scott. But I've never met, and this is always a recurring comment whenever he comes up in conversation, I have never met anybody as driven and as forward-thinking in terms of the business and where WoW rating is going than Sko. And that was very apparent very early. This is why we're going back there. Never met anybody. Can be bloodthirsty in a lot of times to secure the win and to grow the brand, but he was absolutely the most, and still is, the most driven person to do things, which has caught him unawares many times and led to some obvious issues that have happened. But it was weird, like, to see that the focus of the Method brand and the idea of streaming the Race to World First was so relevant in like it was 3 years before it actually became the streamed Race to World First, and Sko saw that coming while everybody else was dipping. Yeah, it was very corporate and business focused, which is what caused this problem, right? It was very business focused because it was about the Method brand. It wasn't about Method WoW, it was about the brand.
The most about, and so a lot of this was mostly about, wanting to make sure like that method was still going to be around in the future and not fade out of existence like so many guilds that we had seen before. So for example, you're looking at Paragon here, which was starting to fade out of existence at this point in time. But then look at the past, like other great guilds, Death and Taxes, Nihilum, Insidia. All these guilds have a similar issue in regards to just fading out of existence because they didn't make themselves into anything other than a World of Warcraft guild, so to speak. And they didn't what's the right word? They didn't have a way to support their players, any further than just being players in the game, so to speak. And that's something that I realized that we'd have to do with Method if we want to keep Method around, because we were also having issues of people having to quit the game or finishing their studies, no longer being able to commit to the World First raiding schedule, which is already starting to get quite busy.
Can I put a question to you guys, because this is still relevant to this day? There's two schools of thought that I've heard from various major players in this space. One is your players are cyclical or more cyclical. You can either try and maintain the same roster and try and build them into a proper career where they're able to, afford to do this as a full-time job, as a prospective career for the future, or is the game itself and the way it's played more of a cyclical situation where people come and go when they've got the time in their lives where they can afford to play a video game full time, during university or during studies and things like that. But ultimately they will fade out to go on to different careers, right? Like Potter is like a teacher now. They've gone on to do those kinds of things, like join the real world, we can call it, right, for the sake of argument, is they cycle in, they have their moment, and they do this thing for part of their life, but then they move on to joining the mainstream corporate angle, unless you're in a position of leadership. Or do you try and build, which is obviously Sko's leaning towards, is what I want to make this into a fully fledged business where we're able to pay our team so that they can be doing this for the next 20, 30 years comfortably and maybe providing things. Like, that's the intention. Whether it gets there or not is debatable, but there you go. Do some racers get into game software kind of job? Some racers have gone on to do other things. There are some racers who work at Blizzard now who are encounter designers or have transferred those skills into other games. Why is it A or B? Some people... You will always have crossover, but what's the goal? Your A or B is your goal, Tamba, but there will always be... In every situation when you choose a path or a road, there'll be some people who deviate off from that, but your intention of how you're planning things to go is usually an A or B scenario, and then people will defer in that, but you're trying to push it that way. Do I know what happened with Kuznam? Yes. I did a podcast with Kuznam, but it has never been released to the public. But yes, I spoke to Kuznam 12 months ago. I had an interview. I did a sit-down interview with Kuznam. But yeah, that's not for public. But I can tell you he's okay. He's doing well. He's in a management role in the real world, is what he's doing now. Retain where possible, but don't let it crush you. Not released. Why? Because the audio quality is so bad that we couldn't even get it into a usable state by sound engineers. Because Kuznam is so far outside the gaming sphere now, he had never heard of Discord. He didn't know what it was. He did not own a PC. He did not own a headset. He had to borrow a microphone and headphones from his work to even have something. Now, I will say, during the interview, I could understand him, what he was saying. But when we listened to it back, it was so bad that we sent that audio off to various places because we couldn't fix it. And they were like, there's just nothing we can do about this, like to put it in a usable state. Yeah. Okay, what about a handful of players who stick around full time and the rest is cyclical? Do you reckon that's sustainable? That's kind of what we have now. I think we're on the wrong thought process. You're running a guild that's a world first guild. You have to decide the business plan for it because, frankly, there's a lot of money involved, right? So you need a business plan for your guild so your guild is still doing this in 5-10 years' time, right? So you need to business plan that out. And that's what I'm saying is like, are you working under the business plan that we might keep the top end core officers, but the rest of the team, we do expect all of them to cycle in and out? Or is your business plan? I would like to get this, I aim to get this guild in a place where the roster we have now is kind of still the same in those few years' time, and we're building a foundation that supports them to do that, and we aim to keep our players for a long time, right? Those are your plans. Now, people will do all kinds of different things. Some people will leave after a year. Some people might stick around for 5 or 6. It really depends. Everybody's life situation is different. Some people are part of wealthy families. That's the thing. And therefore, they don't need to work or do a different job. They're fine with what they get. So that's what I'm talking about. What is your goal? Like, what is the foundation? What is the road you're trying to put people on? And other people, that's personality. It can be very dependent, yeah.
So it's mostly about trying to find a way to make Method a bit more professional.
Experience is a very big deal.
Bring ideally some sponsors and stuff on board, being able to support the players, to make sure that Method, either didn't just disappear overnight because we lost so many players to just IRL stuff, or to stop Method from just being absorbed, I guess you could say, by some other larger esports organization. I wanted to try and keep Method around and, do our own thing, of course.
I remember specifically, I think Red Bull, I might be wrong on this because I haven't researched it. I think Red Bull tried to acquire Method in 2017. I think that was the thing. I think it was 2016 or 2017. I think Red Bull wanted to acquire Method, and Sko turned it down, if I remember. I think that was... I don't know if he brings it up, but I'm pretty sure it happens. Bismay had a question. The idea of being like 18, getting picked up and playing for 10 years, not being good with media and casting, etc., and then getting dropped and having to join the workforce sounds pretty spooky. You're starting from behind. Depends what industry you want to move in with. I was talking to this, actually. We had our team appraisals here like a couple of months back. And I was explaining to like Bex and Chris and everybody else is like, because you work here in this environment, the skills that you've learned are massively transferable to other industries. It depends if you, it's like the guild management thing. You can pull, yes, you did it in a video game, but if you pull those elements out that you did, it can be applied into any number of areas. So you can work that. What did you do during that time? Now, sure, it depends on if you were naturally pretty lazy. So what did you do with your time while you were playing? Well, I just logged in and did dailies all day. I didn't become particularly adept at streaming or speaking. I basically just waited for the race to come around and just did the bare minimum, made sure my characters were ready, blah, blah, blah. Then maybe you're not going to pull too much out of it. But if you got involved in a lot of other aspects, then those are skills you can pull out. You can move into circus management.
For a while, which was unhealthy.
Echo Liquid.
And the raiders were being more and more burdened with
this is hilarious, by the way.
They were now having to keep up maybe 2 alts and alternate classes as Blizzard.
From 2 alts in 2015 to what it looks like now. Oof. Absolutely repugnant shit, man. Absolutely gross. Yeah, like, it was hilarious at the time. It was like you had to do 2 alts, and people were like, this is bullshit. I spoke to Just Wait just before this video came out, because I was hoping that he had the alt splits sheet from 2016. He was like, dude, there's like 0.1% I've got that, and looked into it for it. He's like, I've been through everything. I can't find it anymore. Because I wanted to put it really side by side, because I had the modern one. But Jesus fuck, man, the way this has changed in the last 10 years is gross.
Was stirring. They wanted to...
Yeah, you see, it's crazy actually to think how much more extreme it's gotten since then, of course. But even back then, guys, when obviously there was nothing in the scene, so to speak, everyone was doing this purely from a passion perspective, right? So it did start to feel more of like a job rather than just like, like pure fun of like, logging in for the raid and just performing at your best. Like, everything was getting already a little bit more professional back then. Like, if you guys remember, for example, like all the weak aura tech and everything that we used on Archimond, and just like Preach just said there, the requirement of like a lot more alts, the farming requirements to make sure your characters were ready for raids, like it was just getting a lot more intense. But there wasn't like any, I guess you could say, additional return for the players, so to speak. And at the same time, the competitive scene was also declining a little bit in regards to like other guilds being, competitive. So there was kind of a lot going on in the background.
To stop the blatant account sharing the races
Did we talk about the account sharing?
And that's all well and good, but the big problem, as it regularly is, money.
I'm surprised it didn't say about the account sharing, because this is what they did back in the day. I'm not going to name the player, but there is a player who in one of the method kills has 4 characters in the raid. Four of their characters are in the fucking raid. Like, it's so stupid when you see it. Is 4 of their characters are in the raid. Like, they were just, everybody had a different accounts, all their cards on, and they never had to do it. I was seeing everybody OG was going back to method. I don't know. I'm staying out of it. I have had some interesting DMs over the weekend. That's what I'll say. The characters are all different accounts. Yes, they were all paying for multiple accounts so they could just account share. It was standard. That's how you did it. You needed 5 moonkins. All right, then we'll just borrow everybody else's moonkins. It's as simple as that. Oh, we're getting to the money side now.
Opportunities were creeping in, and they were starting to get pretty lucrative. Okay, the fall.
Okay.
Okay.
They were starting to get pretty lucrative. So this video is based about Serenity, right? Like 2015. Actually, business opportunities were really not lucrative back in 2015. Like, sponsorships were incredibly small, and it was very difficult to get brands interested in a World of Warcraft guild, of course, right? I mean, this is a core reason why I tried to expand Method out into working, with content creators, other, teams that were in like competitive tournaments, like a PvP team. And also I think, maybe some other stuff. But there was really hardly any money in the scene back then. Like this, back in 2015, I was still working full time as a financial analyst, like I mentioned. So there was really not much going on. Like Twitch had only really been a big thing, or not a big thing, but only launched around for 2011, 2012 for us. I think MOP launch was the first time that I ever started streaming, and back then it was.
No one's lying here. This is all a matter of perspective. Like I was very careful about my wording here. Starting to become lucrative. It was the beginning. I was very careful about how I worded this. Starting to become lucrative. There was obviously money because they did acquire a CSGO team, PvP team. There was obviously more money coming in. However, how much is coming in is very subjective depending on what you intend to do with it. And you could say, like, it's not a lot. It's not a lot by today's standards, right? It's certainly not a lot by today's standards, but it was definitely moving up from what had been around previously, which is like a year-long sponsorship with Razer, which gets you 20 headsets, which is what was happening MOP era. That was your sponsorship deal, is you would get like Method sponsored by Razer or Paragon sponsored by Dream or whatever, and you were getting, in most cases, that stuff wasn't even arriving. It was actually when the first time I was part of Method, it became apparent that there was some big issue with one of the sponsors in that they had been promised certain equipment and it hadn't arrived, even though it was like a keyboard or a mouse or whatever, and it hadn't arrived for months. It just hadn't shown up. And they had this entire thread on their forum full of like stupid pictures of like islands in the middle of the ocean with just like headsets on it and shit like that. And they were like, I think I found it, guys. It's like it's here for the island of Costa Rica is my headset. And like they were making just endless meme pictures because this sponsorship had come in. This would have been MOP era. And it just, nothing arrived. But money was starting to come in, obviously. Otherwise, things weren't happening. And from the perspective of the players, that's the perspective I was talking about here.
Only like once or twice a week. And to be honest, like maybe Preach talks about this in the video, we'll see, but there was so much resistance from the guild, like back then, to actually stream our raids and stuff like that. Even the farm raids. Like it was, like people hated streaming in the guild. So there was definitely a
Did
few
you guys
clashes
find this weird?
that.
Those of you who've watched
Like,
it, and we are going to cover it in a second, do you find it weird now to even consider a period of time where people didn't want to stream any sort of world first progression or raiding? Do you find it like almost bizarre? Because I imagine a lot of you have come into this when it was already a thing. Like old heads would probably get it, but I think a lot of younger sort of World of Warcraft players and things like that would be very much like, why wouldn't you want to stream it? Especially if you've grown up in a streaming world where YouTube is full of that kind of content and stuff like that. It's so normalized now. The old heads would probably understand more. It's like streaming was considered very, very fucking weird. Really weird.
Basically, they didn't want to stream our raids or whatever. yeah, so
All of
we'll
it
see.
We're all
isn't
old.
usually a snap thing. It's a combination of things over time
rip
that
pieces,
explodes.
F dude.
So let's set the scene.
Team Master.
Over the past couple of years, the leadership of Method had changed a lot
I wonder
in
what he
terms
says
of
here.
who was doing which task. Famously, incredible raid leader Kuznam
Shout outs,
had
brother.
taken nearly all the raid management work. Officer Potham had become the primary organizer of the guild as a whole. Players such as Infield.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that comment, so to speak. Like, the officer core was still the same as it had been for years. Like, Kuznam was the raid leader before this as well. It was just a case of, I guess certain people, like you mentioned there, like Kuznam and Parton with the Recore attack, maybe started doing it a little bit more. But I think the overall issue here was that, like Kuznam, for example, and I guess Parton and a few others, didn't really agree with the direction that we were taking things. So like I said, the whole direction I was trying to take was that we want Method to be around for years to come. We obviously want to try and build something a bit more sustainable where we can actually support players, so to speak. Try and keep the guild going basically. And there was still a little bit of a pushback, I guess you could say, from Kuznam and co, who basically just wanted to play the game and not really take things much further than that, so to speak. But let's see.
Others were now add-on specialists, and more duties had begun filtering down. To
My
not just
counter
officers.
to that is, I spoke to a lot of these people. The universal, although there was differing opinions, the universal opinion was that the guild was taking on much more responsibility widespread than what they kind of signed up for, and the direction was a problem. Like that was kind of a universal message I got back, is like, yeah, it felt like we were doing everything and SCO was moving further and further away from caring about the WoW guild and Race to World First and more about the Method brand. That was a universal message I got back.
But the members as well. The thing is, none of them were technically the leader of this ship. That, as most know, was
Wait. Okay.
Chris!
There's no way that my head is on Joffrey here, guys. Are is that Joffrey?
You're the king.
Also, I had a lot more hair in this picture, guys. Maybe I need to grow it back out again.
Always wary when Chris puts memes together like this, because I didn't suggest this. This was Chris's thing. It's like, will they giggle or will they... And you kind of know Scott's going to giggle at it, but like some people get really upset about this shit.
go. SCO had begun moving further and further away from the WoW day-to-day guild activities.
So, in regards to this, that is kind of true, but it's not necessarily for the reason that he's, I guess you could say, insinuating here. It was obviously a combination of things, but honestly, guys, mostly it was because it was just crazy trying to obviously work full-time in finance, where you're doing obviously more than 40 hours a week in most places, and still trying to keep up with like the increasing grind of getting your characters ready, but at the same time then also being an officer, trying to manage the guild, and then at the same time trying to build Method into something more than a guild, like on in addition to that, right? So basically that was definitely probably something that impacted things.
And more.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but you could also see it from the player's standpoint as like, we're doing more shit. Both make sense, right? Which is often lost on the internet, unfortunately, but both make sense. Does that make sense? From the player's perspective, they're seeing it a different way. From his perspective, it's like, I'm trying to build something fucking massive here, I'm doing all this kind of stuff. But both things are true. That's where it comes from. Both things can be true.
More and more into the brand that was Method and what its future held. The business prospects of...
I think this was the 2014 BlizzCon, actually,
Yep.
if I'm not mistaken. There's Blatty, obviously.
Shout
Eon
outs
as
to
well.
Blatty.
Method. And I don't mean Method WoW,
Checky.
but Method as a
Look at
potential...
Roger! Look at this little fella. Can you imagine this would become one of the most outspoken fucking can't shut the fuck up voices in the Race to World First? Look, he can't even be asked waving at this point. Oh, cutie baby Roger. Can you believe that who he became from this? Yeah, he looks so shy, right? Isn't it insane?
Major esports org.
Wait, where am I on this? Wait, guys, they cut me out.
They had a pro CSGO team. And
Okay, so the CSGO team that's being talked about here, you can see this is actually a clip from the Gfinity Elite Series. This is not until much later down the line, like years from now, I think, like maybe like 16, 17. So it's not like current footage. We did pick up like a US CS team, I think, in 2015.
This was during this
but
period
it was a
of time,
very low like commitment, like investment.
I don't know
Again,
who the lady
this was
actually.
like our
Nobody I've ever met, I don't
our
know.
attempt to try and make Method more than just a WoW guild, right? So we want to be in the bigger picture, or in the conversation, I guess you could say, with brands when it came to working with brands. Obviously, they want to work with people who are giving them exposure. Whether it's content creators, whether it's winning tournaments or like pro teams. Because at that moment in time, we had very little actual content creators and almost no streaming presence in the Method Guild. Because we had very little streamers, and the guild itself really did not like streaming. Like,
I wish I could get the list of who they brought on. It was Zizaran, Esfand, Tips Out. Oh god, there was a whole slew of people they recruited. Nugi, Annie, Hotted. I think Alkaiser was there. Was Steel Mage in there? I don't remember. Did I meet Steel? Guzu was there, Dan. Yeah, Guzu was in there. I mean, Dan was there with me in Las Vegas. That room had like fucking 50 streamers in it. It was insane. Like where they got to at that point. It was fucking insane. I was like, okay, who is this Zizaran kid? Apparently he's a mega nerd. Joker D, who got fired, I think, from Method like within a month. Yeah, I think Joker D got let go like within a month or something like that. He like ninja'd some item or something. That room was ridiculous. It had like 50 fucking people outside of WoW who were there. Yeah,
not even our farm raids. So actually, if you want
the first time I met Ziz, it was in Vegas, and I go up to her, I was like, so you're Zizaran, right? And he goes, yeah. I said, I'm Preach. And he goes, okay. I was like, I'm going to be commentating on you. All I've been told about you is that your plan is not to play efficiently. Your plan is to just never sleep. And he goes, yeah, that's pretty much my strategy. Because it was supposed to be the race to world first level 16 classic WoW. And Nugi was there. Nugian was there. And Nugi's going, yeah, that's pretty much our plan. Is we're going to make a team and we're just not going to sleep for a week. And I was like, right. He's like, do you think you can keep that up? He's like, yeah, we play Path of Exile, so this is pretty normal to us. I was like, okay, cool.
The Method Guild, there was so much like pushback against it. Like you actually almost, in some cases, it felt like people who wanted to stream almost kind of got a little bit bullied in the guild. Like I guess I don't need to name names, but I think this has kind of been touched on in the past about some people not getting treated that well by certain people in the guild because they wanted to stream or they were streaming.
Well, that happened to me, but not because of streaming. So
there's kind of a negative environment towards streaming, which at the same time made it almost impossible to actually get people interested in the Method Guild because, outside of our competitive success, which a lot of people weren't.
There is something I want to look into. I'd have to reach out to certain people, but I think at some point, this might be bullshit, so cut me some rope on this one. I think he gave an incentive program to players to get more physically in shape because it was better for branding opportunities. I think there was a financial incentive to get into better physical shape so that they wouldn't have the classic cliche, fat gamer look. I kind of want to check into that. That's just it was a rumor, but I'm not sure if it was true. I'd have to ask, because I know Fabo lost a ton of weight and was heavily involved in it. Obviously, they had Gingy as in Gingy's Arnold Schwarzenegger days on the front of a lot of stuff. But I think there was at some point an incentive for them to get into into better physical shape because it was better for photo ops and things like that. Well, I want to check. It's logical, yeah. I mean, Sko's perspective is always the business side, always.
At the time, because we didn't, obviously there was no race to world first, like actually being streamed or anything. We also had very little content creators.
And WoW PvP teams. As such, new and uncomfortable terms started to be thrown around, like streaming. Completely ridiculous. Now remember, this was 2015.
Yeah.
The first broadcasted Race to World First wasn't until September 2018.
Yeah, so I try to do quite a bit of streaming, guys, because obviously, like I said, I'm trying to position Method in a certain way to make sure Method was lasting
very ahead of the curve
long to the future. And again, this caused a bit of issues in the guild. Like people didn't really agree with it, right? Like that's definitely one of the underlying concerns, I guess, that some people had.
Now,
Also, at this point in time, I was
ambition
only
is
streaming like once or
something
twice a
I
week,
have
to be honest.
personal experience with, and I've talked about it a few times.
Oh, I wonder
When
what he says
joined
to this, if
Method
he
for the
even
second
remembers this
time,
happening.
I was a young, up-and-coming YouTuber making scuff-ass videos with a bad mic.
I hate this clip. Chris thinks this is hilarious. I fucking hate this clip, and Chris thinks it's so funny. Let's talk about, first of all, the fashion choice of a button-up shirt and a fucking camouflage hat, right? And this awesome background of my wardrobes with empty plastic boxes, a giant fucking spider on top of it, and using a monitor to try and block the window light because it blew the camera out so fucking much. Like, this is so, for me, embarrassing that I thought this was okay to put out there to talk to you guys. Oh, the monitor is a crisp play. Like, I'm genuinely using that to try and block out the sun because the blind didn't come all the way down. Yeah, that's why. Because the blind didn't reach the bottom of the window. And so I put the monitor there, and I remember shifting this monitor backwards and forwards to try and douse the sunlight that was coming into it. Down to earth, it's not. It's not. I'm wearing the shirt because I've just finished work, because I was working full-time in my other job, which was I was managing a real-life team across the country at that point. So I'm wearing the shirt because I've just cut in from work, and I genuinely believed at the time if I put on the cap, it made it less work looking, like less like I was some corporate idiot doing things. Grim.
Microphone in a backroom bedroom.
Nice monitor.
Fuck you, man.
Videos. And after my very first raid coming back to Method, I made a video talking about that raid. The very next day, that video was now on the front page of the Method website. This actually caused me a lot of heat with the guild.
It certainly
People
did.
were under the assumption.
Yeah, so you see, he actually mentions it there too, guys, right? Like, the guild, a lot of the guild in general, it's so weird to say, but they were against, like, content creation.
Yeah.
Like streaming, creating content about, like, the guild or whatever.
I got so much hate for this thing.
Like, that's...
I
that was just
downplay it in the video,
big
but I
divide,
got
guess
a
you could
lot
say.
of hate for this happening.
It's just a different mindset, right? Like, I understand, obviously, why some people would want to do that and want to just play the game and then just stop playing it, whatever. But for me, like I said, I was really trying to make sure that Method was going to be around in the years to come, right? So we had to try and build it into something more than just a WoW guild. Otherwise,
A gatekeeping
Method was going to
thing? No, it was... obviously, when I rejoined, I didn't know that this was happening in the background, right? Because this had been going on for a while with the, like, push to stream, the push for branding and all that. I had no idea about any of that stuff. When I did my interview with Roger, we never talked about any of that kind of stuff because me and Roger just talked shit for like 2 hours. That was my Method interview for the second time I joined. It was just me and Roger talking absolute dog shit for like 2 hours. And then he was like, oh yeah, you're in. Like, don't worry about it. That was it. So I wasn't aware of any of the shit that was happening in the background with the push to content creation and Sko trying to take the guild in that direction. I had no idea. So then when I joined and I was like rising up as a YouTuber in the WoW space, everybody obviously saw that, and rightfully so, based on what they understood was happening in the guild, is that I had been brought in not because I could play the game, but because I was going to do content creation and I was bringing more eyeballs to Method. And then when this video went up, like immediately after the first raid on their front page, that reaffirmed that suspicion to those guys. And I got a lot of shit, like a lot of private shit on the back of it. Yeah. Besides a couple of people, like Kuznam in particular was really nice. He didn't see it that way. Aladia didn't. There was a few people who just never saw it that way. Roger didn't, like, but a lot of the members, yeah, they were not fucking happy at all. They were really pissed off. As was I. I was like, dude, I think at the time I was talking about it on stream or whatever. It's like, I'm going back to Method, but I'm not planning to do a lot of content creation about Method itself. Nothing will really change in terms of me talking about the raids. I will be a Method, but I'm not going to be like, do it that way. You know what I mean?
Out of existence in like the next few years, like it's just inevitable, like every other WoW guild out there, basically.
That I had been brought back because of my YouTube presence. I was there to bring attention and eyeballs to Method. That wasn't the case at all, and I wanted to prove myself. And they hadn't asked permission. So I sent a message saying, you guys need to take that video down, and you need to ask me if you want to use my content that way. Now, in their defense, they did. They took it down immediately and never did anything else. However,
I actually don't remember this particular incident that he's talking about, but he obviously, you know, it's his video, so it probably definitely happened.
I was then called into a meeting with Method management.
I wonder if he
thought I
remembers
was in
this.
trouble. But no, I was called into a meeting to discuss Method's future branding opportunities and revenue streams through YouTube, how they could grow their brand that way.
Okay.
As you can see,
I actually, again, I don't remember that specific conversation, but Preach obviously remembers it probably quite well, so I'm sure again that probably happened.
It did.
idea of branding, growth, and marketing has been a big push internally at Method for a very long time.
I can't tell you, I totally thought I was getting kicked out of the guild. Was Sko in the call? Yeah, Sko was there. Yes, it was Sko and somebody else. But I totally thought I was getting kicked because I was getting a lot of shit from people in the guild. I was getting a lot of shit. Like I got told that my member feedback thread, because that's what they did at the time, is you had a trial thread that you couldn't see where players who had played with you could give feedback. And the only message I had received back from there was like, yeah, it's full of all sorts of weird shit, dude. I was like, oh God, like what's in there? I totally thought I was getting kicked.
Long time, because that was in 2012.
So in the months leading to the breakup, cliques were forming, as they do with most people not being interested in the Method brand, marketing, PvP teams, and so on.
Yeah, exactly. So he kind of touches on here what I was saying before, right? Like there's certain people in the guild, including, you know, people like Kuznam, for example, who only want to play the game, right? Like didn't want to really get like build Method into anything other than just the WoW guild. And like I said, that was obviously a difference in opinion.
This is obviously, I mean, we used this clip, we talked about it a lot because this is a repeating cycle in nearly every guild. And it doesn't matter about the World First Guild. Cliques form. All the time. Like, even minor ones. They might not be as hard. This Nihilum is... Nihilum is the most extreme example we have where it became very national in terms of the cliques that were formed. But it happens all the time. Like, you will probably have people who are like the Mythic Pluses. There's some guys who are the PvPers and shit like that. But it happens in every guild all the way from the top. And it leads to so many problems. So many problems when these cliques start to become more divided. Like, if they spread, like, they really start to move away from each other, it's absolute fucking poison for your guild if this starts to happen on too big a... And certainly when they start getting their own Discord, right? At that point, if you've got, like, the Danish mafias hanging out in one Discord and the Brits aren't welcome and the Greeks aren't welcome in there, and you know that they're talking shit about you, which is what's always happening. They're just talking mad shit about you. Yeah, it's bad.
That he and a few others shared, and that was obviously one of the main
secret guild discords are
ultimately
like a bullet in the head.
Split happened. Really just the difference.
The Danish mafia hated all the
the next
British
step
players
should
in
be
Nihilum.
for like the guild in general and the wider like Method organization.
And certainly not streaming progression. At the same time, not being happy that as they saw it, they were doing most of the work for Method Guild, which was making the money. But the money appeared to be flowing to mostly one person. They appeared...
Okay, that is... I mean, that statement is just, I don't know, that's definitely... I mean, in my opinion, of course, total nonsense. Like, that didn't actually happen. Again, in 2015, the money involved in, like, the guild and, like, the wider Method, like, activities was so small. And at the same time, like I mentioned, just up until... what it was, I think August 2015, I was still working full-time. And then after that, when I stopped working full-time, basically any money I was able to make was basically from, you know, the content creation in terms of like streaming on Twitch.
It's not fake news. It's different perspectives. If you see that your management is acquiring teams and things like that, look at it from the player's point of view. And that's why, again, my wording is very selective here, is like it appears to be going one way. You're taking less involvement as far as they can see, and we're doing all these other things. That's it. Perception is everything. Again, that's why the wording is very careful here. Is like it appears that like this is benefiting mostly one guy, in the eyes of the people who are not happy that are talking about. They're talking about streaming. They're talking about building the business and all that kind of stuff, right? You understand where it's coming from.
Which are similar in terms of money from Method. It was so small, and it was any money was basically being invested into
roll a perception
the org
check
or to the players
yeah.
And whatnot, right? So, yeah, I think that's a big misconception.
You just want
like maybe even at some point in time, guys, like it would be interesting to talk about how much money
For sure.
Method actually has made.
I would agree with that in order to maybe assuage feelings that even the players still have that were involved at the time. I think that's a really smart idea. Like, this is what the reality was, because there are people who think I'm a millionaire. I mean, you could check on all the things about what we bring in. It's like, well, where did that come from? You know what I mean? I mean, some of you will have seen, what was that article? It was like, how much a streamer's worth. And there was like a whole thing on me that was like, is worth like 2.5 million single. It was ridiculous, right? It's like some AI generated thing that I've had referenced back to me several times. Like, you can see what we bring in. Everything's public. And you also see we have a team behind us and we have rent and all that. Like, where would these millions be coming from out of interest? I'm very curious. I rent my home. Yeah, so it was like he's worth like I think it was like 2.5 to 3 million. Yeah, no, be right back, make our money back. Like, the perception is everything. Because obviously a lot of people look at it as like, oh, we got like a studio and stuff like that. Like, I was recently asked to buy an esports company. I was like, what are you talking about? They were like, you know, just curious, given your history, is like, would you be interested in acquiring this esports team? And I'm like, what? Like, no. What are you talking about? Like, every penny we make get invested back. But it's all about perception. It's like, okay, this is what we think is going on. So I think actually, like, saying, no, this is what was going on might actually, like, assuage some of the ill feeling the other players have. But I don't know whether the general public would care. Like, they're probably not asked. But it can be helpful to be like, no, this is the reality. This is what was going on. And there's also, I'm not saying Sko did this, but there's a lot of people who live well beyond their means or put on a perception of being wealthier than they are, right? There's a lot of that to try and sell the image they're trying to portray and those kind of things. So it can come across in very weird ways.
Over the years, because it would be quite surprising to a lot of people that most of it has... I mean, of course, it's just been reinvested in things like, even like, for example, the race world first popping off and whatnot. You guys wouldn't believe how long it took for brands to kind of catch up and understand like the size and scale of that opportunity.
Oh yeah.
While of course, like the putting on the events and everything, extremely expensive and so on. But I think there's always this misconception, I guess you could say, that there's a ton of money and it's, you know, people aren't seeing it, so to speak.
To game, push world first with their friends, and not be a part of some big.
I'm actually surprised so far.
At least I'm not jumping this time, guys, but I guess they're indicating that I'm meant to be Galix here speaking to like the officers. And we know what happens in this cutscene. This is actually one of the few cutscenes in the recent patches that I have actually seen, right?
The clearest public example of this came from member Tegu, who posted this when he left. I was quite disappointed how the guild meeting went last night, and how much was talked about.
Yeah, because that's what I'm saying. This goes back to the misconception from some of the players that there was a lot of money flowing into the org and that they weren't seeing enough of it, so to speak. Again,
it's amazing to me and probably to Chris watching this how much is not in this video, because we can't make a video like this that's too long. Our video is what, like 12 minutes, but it's one of those videos that is designed to inspire a lot of conversation, and obviously the amount we cut out of this video, including that clip, was actually up until 3 days before this video went live, Chris. I think we had like 4 different versions of leading into this section that we reviewed backwards and forwards. And we were like, what should we put in? And then we were like, it'll be fine. It won't be received badly or something like that.
That just didn't happen in reality. But it's very difficult to actually change someone's opinion about that, so to speak. But ultimately, again, like the thought process behind this is, of course, let's try and make Method into more of a guild. Let's ideally, do more content creation, get more streamers interested in actually streaming. Let's work with some content creators. Let's work with some other teams, like YPUP and so on, so that we can actually attract sponsors. Then, of course, once we attract sponsors, we can push more money back into the guild, and we can actually, give people an incentive, like, to actually stay around, right? Like, so we'd be able to stop players from like quitting the game or whatever, right? Like some of our best players that would allow us to still be competitive and actually really still push Method as a world first rating guild. We'd make sure that Method had longevity. We'd make sure that we didn't get absorbed by like another, esports organization or just fade out of existence. And historically, like, this has happened so many times that we've only been able to keep like some of the best players around, because we were able to offer them like additional incentives or, you know, compensation, so to speak. Like,
I think this is really clear where Sko's head was and why the players, the friction was created, right? I don't think, even from his own perspective, you could tell that he was very singular focused on what the purpose of this was and why the players weren't okay with being sort of dragged along with it at the time. Because it's not changed. Like, that perspective and that focus has not changed even to today, with where Method is now. It's like, it comes across to me, it just reinforces how this friction happened. Because the focus is still there, the drive is still there. Like, this is where we're going. The guilds are coming along with it, whether they like it or not. Yeah, now it's more accepted, but again, it's like trying to cycle it into what was happening in 2015, where none of this was the thing. Like, we were getting headsets and shit like that, right? And maybe a mouse. Or you had to choose. You could choose one $50 product or whatever to go with it. So even though you were getting a headset, it wasn't a good one. And then it was like, okay, now we're going to stream this, and now we're doing it like a job, and we're going to be on comms all day. Like, what the fuck, man?
Like, there's actually, like, even for example, Scripe, like, you know, when he was very leading Method, like, there was actually instances where Scripe would have just quit the game full out if we weren't actually able to, you know, of course, compensate him, you know, for the time that he was putting into the game and everything, because he had to get a job or whatever, right? Like that's a situation that there were often. You guys can imagine now in the professional scene that we're in right now. It's always impossible to kind of imagine what we're talking about here, but yeah, there was a big gap there
about money. A gulf. This was a part of the exodus of every single...
Right, this is what I'm saying. This is what we saw that day on September 10th. Like, compare that to today. That if this was Liquid and it was like, I'm fired up has left the guild, you know, just like all, like, just name after name was just gone. You know, fucking Mirez has left the guild. Gingy has left the guild. Tifa's left the guild. Frago has left the guild. Like, just absolutely fucking... We were like, what the fuck just happened? If you try and compare it, this is only a snapshot of what we found. But this was every player. Just fucking disappeared. Like, whoa.
Member and officer of Method. Excluding just
Bro,
two.
Fragments.
Just wait.
I see Fragments' name there. Like, Fragments has left Method and rejoined Method, honestly, guys, at this point in time, like 4 times. It's actually wild.
Big true, actually.
Love the guy, though.
Roger Brown. And of course, Sko. Practically.
There's someone missing here, actually. I'm pretty sure Perfecto was still part of the team as well. Like, I don't think Perfecto left.
The entire roster left within a
Oh,
few.
I'd have to check that.
Also, Sloopbag joined Serenity, guys. That was a real sore point for me, actually. Like, I've talked to Sloopbag, obviously, since then. But Sloopbag was meant to join Method just before this kind of this kind of happened, right? Like, me and Sloopbag were pretty close.
Chris, can we check? Did Perfecto stay? We need to go to the archives.
Like, we hung out all the time at, like, BlizzCon, blah, blah.
Sloopbag is Sloop,
and Sloopbag
yeah.
was actually meant to join Method. Then, obviously, when the Serenity stuff happened, he went to join Serenity instead. And so that was like that felt like a real sore spot, to be fair. But it's all water under the bridge,
He
guys.
is worst player, yeah.
Obviously, it was the source.
I feel bad if
the
I left
sore spot,
Perfecto.
of course, was that the guild had just decided that they wanted to go and do their own thing with Serenity. That was obviously a much bigger thing.
There's a few bits. I don't think this...
yeah, so-
I'm not sure where this goes, but certainly... Worst player is Perfecto. Worst player is Perfecto, yeah.
Hours. This, of course, led to the internet meme of Sko was the problem. But was that true? A few hours after the exodus, Sko...
Okay, so here's actually my statement that I made, guys.
Yeah.
Let's see. As you're probably aware, the big changes happening Method.
He
A lot of issues
stayed.
that play that
Perfecto
caused this somewhat
stayed.
complex
Fuck,
than
man, I didn't
others.
know that.
Been a pretty bad atmosphere, strained relationships in Method. And while in the past, the unified goal of pushing for World First has kept the guild together, this is evidently no longer the case. In short, very basic summary.
I know
of
we want
issues that caused
Yakuza.
the
I
separation.
find this very interesting.
Yeah, so World of Warcraft, hardcore rating in decline, lack of competition, the efforts required to raid at hardcore level is not necessarily enjoyed as much as it previously was. I kind of mentioned that already.
There's
People are
so much
motivated by different
irony in
things,
this post for
at various
2015
levels,
compared
and
to
as always, external
2025.
factors like money involved. Yeah, we talked about that. Lack of leadership. The members' faith in the officer team's ability to lead due to motivation and drive wasn't at its strongest. Over time, there's been a transfer of power between the officer teams and the members. For example, raid leading was done by Kuznam and certain other activities were being organized by members. Yeah, so this is also, I mentioned that earlier, right? Like previously. So yeah, unfortunately, key people such as Kuznam, raid leader, and Partum, the guy who organized a lot of the Archimon stuff, including like the Recor Tech and stuff, have decided they'd rather start fresh in a new guild alongside those that they closely associate with.
Well, I find interesting about this wherever he's going is that even here he's saying we're going streaming regardless. He's like, so I don't know if I could have put this post out. It's like my entire roster of world first players just left. I'm rebuilding the guild and we're still going to stream the race to world first. It's fucking ballsy whether you take it or not. Like my entire team just left. Fuck it. I'm going to rebuild it and we're still going to fucking stream the race.
So basically, guys, the problem that you have here when the guild obviously follows generally the raid leader, right? So when Kuznam and a couple of like his like a handful of his like close, I guess you could say, buddies decide they want to do something, then obviously most people are going to follow the raid leader because they think that's what makes the most sense, right? Like they're used to obviously that person being the leader of the guild. So yeah, as I say here, many members will obviously follow the raid leader, which is understandable. So in regards to the future of a method, zero intentional let the method guild die. We're going to use the resource at disposal to rebuild the guild. And I already started speaking to people like really quickly after this.
Within about 2 hours, is from what we could
I was
tell.
never going to give up on method, right? Like it's something that I was building at that point in time for over 10 years, and I was so determined to make sure that method existed into the future, which was my motivation and drive for a lot of this prior to even the guild split, right? So there's also even talk here at the bottom about investigating the possibility of streaming the entire progression, because again, that was an idea to really try and incite, I guess you could say, a lot more interest and excitement into the raiding side of things again, while also being able to create a lot of content and like attract, hopefully, eventually sponsors and brands to be interested in what we're doing, which will allow us to obviously secure method's longevity and actually, give back to the team and the players to keep them around.
Took to Facebook to give his side. In that post, it is confirmed the issues mentioned above and that he was indeed pushing in 2015 for Method to start streaming the race to world first.
Dudes, the idea of streaming the race in 2016 is completely insane. I know it's normal to you now, but you've got to look back then.
Yes and no. Yes, because streaming was still quite early in World of Warcraft back then.
I love that face, a full duck face.
Traction. Obviously we had quite a few streamers by 2015, I guess you could say, or at least some people in the guild were streaming, which I mentioned before wasn't always seen that positively by the guild.
Lovely
However,
pause.
there wasn't actually that much competition for us either, right? So this was actually an opportunity again for us to, stream, probably still win, and at the same time,
Pause on a diabolical frame. See how you watched this already, Mike?
So it was definitely something to consider even back then.
Streaming had just begun to exist.
But what's funny is that actually when Serenity obviously was formed, and then we had to compete against Serenity with Method, then streaming obviously had to be put on the back burner because, again, if Serenity wasn't going to stream, then obviously we couldn't stream because all of a sudden we had like tough competition in the raiding scene again. So that was why it was put on the back burner, guys, until like Preach mentioned earlier in the video, like September 2018.
So is Sko suggesting that the plan was to stream from Legion onwards? That I didn't know. That the actual plan was to stream. If they hadn't left, they would have. I wonder if that's what actually brought it to the boil. I need to double check that. Is that it was actually the fact that we was going to say we're going to start streaming progression in Legion.
Idea of the average WoW player wanting to sit in front of a camera.
I'm thinking that way, Mushi. Yeah, no one. I will say, no one told me that. I spoke to many people, but no one said like, well, they were saying we were going to start streaming progression in Emerald Nightmare, and fuck that noise, right?
All day, every day was extremely uncomfortable. So it is no surprise that a lot of the guild were against it.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people bring about Future. So Future, the idea was that a lot of the world first guilds didn't want to stream progress because it's obviously going to hamstring you, right? That's especially in a competitive environment. Future was made up of people who were already into streaming and enjoying streaming. And so the idea with Future was like, well, we're already streamers, so we don't mind. That's why it attracted a lot of the streaming personalities to that guild to stream progression.
This idea.
In September 2015, an announcement. I was going to make a point of this. Serenity had streams. There were people who liked streaming. Like Gingy was in Serenity and stuff, right? Like there was plenty of people who like streaming. They just wanted their control over it and not to like force it into the Race to World First.
Was made. A new guild, a new dream was coming. Serenity had arrived, comprising practically all the...
You actually can't imagine, by the way, guys, like, I don't know, man. Like, when the Serenity split happened and they created the new Serenity guild, like, yeah, it definitely sucked a lot. Like, because, like I said, a lot of, like, players that I played with for quite a few years had actually followed, you know, Kuznam and Co. to create Serenity.
Yeah, this is not drama. This
really
is
sucked.
historical
really
stuff
sucked.
for the race.
Like, obviously, you can imagine.
And that's
like,
a huge
how it
fan of the
felt
race.
for me, so to speak.
I find this stuff
really rough,
super
actually,
captivating. It's because I've watched it all the way. Yeah,
the Method World First.
I mean, look at the legends on this list. Absolute legends. Jimmy's still like they're still members of like the legendary hero today. Like there'll be names here which are legends, which most of you won't know, like Potham. But like the legends here, Sloot. We all know Sloot, Kuznam, Gingy's first appearance. This is Gingy's first world first raid. This is where he appeared from. Nagura. We obviously know Caro very, very, very well. Zalia, obviously been in the news a lot. Ashvale. All these names here. Sparkhugs still considered wild. I mean, we never got THD versus Sparkhugs. Like, what the fuck? How did we never get THD versus Sparko? To see who would have been the fucking hero out of that. Like, that's one of those things. Those, for me, are my, like, boxing matches that I want to see. Like, I cannot wait for the next Race to World First because we're going to have Hopeful versus Fired Up in Liquid. That's going to be a fucking thing, man. That's going to be a fucking thing. Like, we're going to have Hopeful versus Fired Up, which is going to be just so good to watch. Like, how them two play out. It's a clash of titans in the PvE world anyway that you just want to see. Sparko was a fucking legend and so nice as well. Like, I can't tell you how relaxed I was when I spoke to him because people were bitching at me about Dark Intent because I was playing Warlock alongside Sparko, right? So we were the Warlocks and I was fresh and I whispered him, I'm like, dude, everybody's fucking bitching at me about Dark Intent. He went, you know what you tell them? You tell them to go fuck themselves. That's what you tell them. I was like, are we down with that? It was like, if anybody bitches in your trial thread about you not giving them Dark Intent, I will correct it for them. And I'm like, my fucking man, absolute legend. And then he went on to do his YouTube channel, so we talked a lot about that kind of stuff. Like, absolute hero. He's like, you tell them to go fuck themselves, and they're not getting it.
Raiders, and now including some fresh up-and-coming players who might be decent. They had a...
I'll have you know, I held my own with Sparko. Fucko. I was younger then, and I cared a lot more. I gave a shit then.
Chance. They had done some good challenge mode times in Mists of Pandaria, like this Gingy guy, whoever he was.
Okay.
Serenity was to be a no BS, no fluff, just gamers with skill and experience going in.
What's interesting, actually, guys, is that Gingy, Deep Shades, Fragments, and I think it was Lozelle at the time, they were the first 4 guys to come to Method after the Serenity split. So they were the first 4 that kind of jumped back into...
It makes sense, because Deep Shades... I wanted to include this in the video, but Deep Shades, we mentioned incorrectly in this video, and I only thought about it afterwards, but Fabo came from Rapid Eye Movement under Scripe, and for whatever reason did not join Method. He went to Serenity instead. A little tidbit.
Method. Yeah.
To kick ass. This team has everything, right? They have veterans who have a massive history of getting Race to World First. They have seen the light before, and now they're free. They're free of corporate overlords. They're free of...
I mean, listen, I probably call it corporate overlords, guys. This is a gross exaggeration for sure. Like, I mean, yeah.
It's
like,
for entertainment value, and you know it.
Like, even now, like, I mean, it's like... It's still very, very casual, I guess you could say. We're all gamers at the end of the day. Like, it wasn't like a corporate environment at all, really. Yeah.
Chasing money as a factor, and they can just gain.
Like, it was just honestly like friends and like fellow players like playing a game. Like, it was
bound to win, right? No.
This is so sad to me,
in May
man.
2017, Serenity disbanded, having never achieved that world first that they had fought so hard for.
Some of you will know the reason for this. Can you imagine a worse time in WoW? What is the worst time in WoW history the Serenity split could have happened? Because I think maybe the worst one would have been... The only comparable time to this would have been Shadowlands. No, BFA wasn't that long. It's got to have been Shadowlands, right? The Shadowlands thing? Yeah, it's got to have been. What happened?
What happened?
You'll find out.
Let's start with Serenity. They had an absolutely stellar roster of players. However, you old schoolers will remember the raid drought of Hellfire Citadel. Archimonde fell for these guys in July 2015. We didn't get a new raid tier until September.
455 days between patches. You started a new guild, ready and raring to go, and they had to wait 455 days to actually raid together. That is just cruel. It's fucking cruel. And it was Emerald Nightmare, which was done in 2 days or whatever the fuck it was, right? Oof. Fucking horrific. Is there a more horrific time to try and start a brand new project with excited players and then you're hit with this? It was awful. It was just so bad. So bad.
September 2016.
Yeah,
That's wild, actually. I had actually forgotten how long a gap this had been, guys. This is actually crazy to think about.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, during that time, of course, Method was able to rebuild quite a bit.
I mean, I didn't stress this in the video enough, but how perfectly did this play into Method's hands and against Serenity? Not only did Method have over a year to rebuild the team and get it to where it needed to be, but Serenity just had to sit and wait because they came with the full roster raring to go, right? Like, there was already official word on why this happened. No, not as to why it happened, but the idea was they were trying to do these... immediately after this, they shifted to the like strategic 2-year expansion life cycle, where for some bizarre reason, they were like dead set that there should be a new expansion every 2 years to the dot, regardless of what was going on. There was like zero adaptability for a while. And so Blizzard implemented there'll always be a new expansion every 2 years. Nobody asked for it, and it led to things being rushed. It led to things being unfinished. It led to people like things finishing early that people are actually enjoying, right? Like Trial of the Crusader, not Trial of the Crusader, whatever the hell your raid was, like completed and the next tier was coming like really quickly. It was fucking insane. Like people were still progging Hellier that weren't even anywhere near done with Trial of Valor, and the new raid was, or Nighthold was coming. We're like, what is happening? Why? We went 455 days without a raid, and now there's new raids coming out all the time. Like, it was just so weird.
Which I guess obviously wasn't bad for us at the time.
Over a year of nothing to do. It was a dark time for us all.
Mm-hmm.
Over that time, Serenity lost at least 4 of their world first level healers.
Oof.
Over the time Serenity played, you'll notice...
That is practically the death knell of a world first guild. Losing DPS sucks, but you can replace them. Losing tanks sucks, but you can replace them. Losing world first healers, that is almost unrecoverable. Almost unrecoverable. It's bad enough, yeah, you're right. It's bad enough in your normal guild, but like at the world first level, the amount of people who can be world first level healers is so few in the grand scheme of the player base. I always attained, like for me personally, it's Liquid's biggest strength is their healing squad. Just impressive time and time again is Liquid's healing team is just fucking so good. So good. It's just when you lose that healing squad. Why is that? Do people just hate healing? No, there are lots of people who enjoy healing. At the world first level, it's incredibly hard. It's incredibly hard. Like the level of skill required to play at the world first level and be a healer that can also do all the things that are necessary to get over world first prog is exceptional, especially when you need to trust those healers implicitly to keep you alive, because what you can't afford in the world first scene on prog is to not make decisions because you're worried you might die. That can't be allowed. Like, you need to be able to have the trust that your healing team is going to take care of you. And that could snowball very quickly, is if you're not ultra confident that the healers have got you, even when your health is at like 5%. I remember specifically talking to the healing team of Jaina, and they were regularly letting the raid sit at like 7% health for maybe 40 seconds or something. And the healers just kept stressing at them. It's like, don't worry about it. We just don't need to get your health topped up for ages. So we're going to be DPSing. We will have you ready to take the next burst of damage. So even though you're like losing your ass because you're on 5% health or whatever for this really long period of time in a world first progression, they're like, just trust us. And if your team isn't up to that, especially if you panic, like healers will often panic and press big cooldowns when they're not supposed to. And that can't happen because that cooldown is planned to happen in like a minute and a half's time. And if that cooldown isn't there in a minute and a half time, then people are going to die and someone else is going to pop it. Yeah, like it's very hard for healers to get out of that. Certainly if you're a pug healer, like if you go to LFR and you see like the raid drop, you'll see like 5 tranquilities and fucking whatever pop out, right? There'll be spirit links all over the goddamn floor. Everybody just pops everything because the raid's dying. Like, that can't work at the world first level. Like, it's just not possible. Your shit is assigned and you need to trust that your team is going to carry that weight. It's a very difficult skill to learn, and there's just not a lot of people who can also do that and do great plays at the same time. It's tough. It's really, really tough. Like, if you watch Ryson play, obviously I see more of Ryson than I do the Liquid Healing team from a point of view when I'm covering the race. He's doing things that like are just ridiculous while also doing other plays and keeping the raid alive and running around. Like I always request when we're doing the race world first is to watch Ryson's POV for just a little bit of time, because the shit the guy is doing is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And finding those players is super hard to do. If there was a lot of money in the WoW raiding scene, like a lot of money, if it was more like, you know, trading players at league level and shit like that, healers would be paid by far the most. By far the most. They would be traded for astronomical amounts of money. Yeah. You also need to trust your DPS to let you keep them at 5% for ages. Yeah, and not waste things like health stones and health potions, right? Like, how many of you maybe even have a macro or some sort of weak aura that says you should health potion now because your health's at a certain threshold? Like, to not respond, to be sat at, like, no health and be chilling and know that your healing team has your back. That's not easy to train your raid to do. And when they don't trust you to do that, it snowballs and they waste cooldowns. They use defensives when they're not supposed to because they're nervous. They're shaky. Like, it's tough, especially with the healing requirements on the raids that we've seen now. Like, Mugsy would be a great example of that. That Mugsy transition after the intermission where Echo stumbled a few times, like a lot of times, in just keeping people alive coming out of that phase because it was just so brutal, the amount of healing on the raid and the rot damage and all that kind of stuff, that you knew people were popping cooldowns and stuff at the wrong times to try and get through it, you know? Strange names appear in their raid frames. I won't say who, but one of these was the infamous mage Kuznam, now playing a healer to cover the losses. It is widely known that at the world first level, healers are insanely hard to come by. In Kuznam's return...
That is actually true, by the way, guys. Healers are really, really difficult to find in the race world first. Like, getting good healers is really, really difficult. It's something that we've actually worked years on, really, with Method, recently, even.
Time at post, he mentioned that in Serenity...
Oh, wait, that's interesting, actually. Let me go back. So this is Kuznam's leaving post, guys.
Yeah.
Like, disbanding post with Serenity. I remember here, look, let's see. To end it off with, thank you to Method for the motivation you brought since we split up, and thank you for our times back in the day before we ditched. Props to you, Sko, for building the brand you've always talked about. I've been in it, and I want to give you a massive kudos of respect to you for not burning out. Like this, I remember reading this, guys, when Kuznam posted the statement all those years ago, and it was really nice to hear. Like, big respect to Kuznam for, you know, saying this.
Kuznam's one of the nicest people in the world, man.
Yeah, true.
Like I said, even when everybody was hating on me, not everybody, but like a vast portion of the guild was really, really hating at me, even in DMs, like directly. Kuznam was like chilling with me in TeamSpeak, and just like helping me out, and like, oh, dude, so you want to play Warrior? Like, when Kuznam was the one who came to me and was like, I know you don't want to play Warlock anymore, dude. What do you want to play? Like, you've got the skill, you've got the talent. Like, I'm open. It was just the best day of my life, honestly, in terms of WoW rating, is to be told, like, dude, we know you can game. Like, I can see it. What do you want to play? And I'll shuffle the raid around to give you that spot. And I was like, I want to play a Warrior. And I was like, all right, I can make that happen. And I was like, awesome. Like, so good. Like, even while all these people were bashing on me and all this kind of shit, he was like, dude, I got you. I see what's happening here. This is cool. It wasn't Preach Smash. It might have been X-Preach. I can't remember what my Method Warrior name was. Something like that. It was, I think it might have been X-Preach at the time. And that might have been my mage.
Competitor, like, bowing out. That was very respectful for sure. Yeah. Really appreciated that.
Mentioned that in Serenity's short lifespan, they had over 50 members of the...
Yeah, it's actually funny, guys, that they mentioned this here, like the sponsors that they've had as well with Serenity, because, like I said, they were quite against like the sponsor stuff originally, but then, you know, over time, I guess everyone changes eventually when they realize
they even recruited
the need for it, so to
Loz
speak.
of Fat Boss TV.
I love this clip so much. This is such a classic Laz. For those of you who've been to PreachCon and met Loz, this is Loz face. It's such a good clip because Alex looks about 5 years old, but look at Loz face like he wants to kill Ian. Classic Loz face. Yeah, Alex is so young in this picture, but Loz, like, I can't even imagine what's happening in Loz's brain here. I don't even know what they're talking about, but like, oh, I love that dude so much. I miss him.
That's how desperate they were. I'm joking. Loz is easily one of the...
I will point out for my regular stream viewers is when we filmed this, Chris immediately said, I'm turning this into an emote because the stream will like it. So I don't know what Chris has in mind, but I came up with this idea. I was like, I just want to make sure people don't think Loz is a bad healer, because he's not. Loz is easily one of them. I mean, sure, Furball back me up. Loz is a phenomenal healer. So I just wrote on here that I'm lying right now. And Chris went, I mean, the stream's going to really like this in...
best healer in the world. They just couldn't recover that hole. They were exceptional, though, achieving world third Xavier,
shit and bald healer, actually decent.
Hellier, and world second Gul'dan before disbanding. What made it really bad, though, was on Hellier and on Xavius. They were beaten by none other than Method. How?
Yeah, this was an incredible comeback. Indeed.
There it is, Mike, I suppose.
Like, it was, yeah,
that is pretty heinous.
The history books.
How in the hell did Method lose its entire roster and then the very next raid tier beat that previous roster? And do you know what made it infinitely worse, to pour salt in that wound? When Method did overtake Serenity, Sko sent them this.
Oh my god. Yeah, that's sweet, guys. The gif of the Warcraft movie where he offers his hand and then he pulls it away. I remember like talking on Method's like TeamSpeak back in the day about whether I should post this or not. But most people thought it would be funny. But it was definitely an iconic moment for sure.
So let's leave Serenity and look at what Method did. Sko went on the hunt.
Okay, we're about to get into what apparently is the most controversial part of this video.
Immediately.
Apparently.
And as it turns out, a chance meeting at an airport between Sko and the raid leader of the then World 6 Guild Rapid Eye Movement would...
Can I point out, this is a Rapid Eye Movement's official video intro? I thought Chris had added this in. I had never seen this before, and it doesn't contain any Rapid Eye Movement. I hate this video, and Scripe should feel ashamed that this was authorized.
Change everything. After messages have been passed between a lot of potential guilds, the Rapid Eye Movement guild...
That's actually not 100% true, right? Like,
Right, what Sko's about to say here is also not true.
I actually didn't meet Scripe at the airport. I met Zerps, who was an officer in Rapid.
I have had like 150 different variations of this meeting. I'm taking it from what I was told by multiple people, including Scripe at the time, who's Scripe's now remembering it differently as well. Back in like I've heard this story a million times, and now nobody seems to be. We think Potter is accurate. Is that they had like I think Pemol or somebody met him in an airport, and then they had like a Discord call or something. But either way, it doesn't matter to the relation to the video.
Movement.
Guild seemed receptive to a possible guild merger. Their leader, known as Scripe, happened to be passing through the same city as Sko. And so they met and they had a coffee.
So this should be Zerps.
In that conversation,
yeah, but it wasn't
decided
Zerps
that
either.
Rapid Eye Movement would indeed move and change name to Method, bringing their players you may know like Deep Shades, Revez, Narcoles, Noggy, Potter, amongst many others with him. Method, of course, offered management, money, and a chance at moving to the big show. And it turned out this Scripe guy was pretty good at raid leading, and he seemingly had an immediate connection with Roger Brown. Maybe they'll be friends one day.
Do you know? This is like a stupid thing, but we were looking for this clip forever. Blizzard went and shot a documentary about Echo, and they got Scripe and Roger into the same city and had them like on a bridge and talking and all that. And that video is gone now. I think because Ken's in it. And so they've taken it down. And nobody saved it. No one in the Echo team saved it. Nothing. It's just vanished from the internet. This works fine too, but I was like, oh, we should have the clip with Roger and Scripe on the bridge from that Echo documentary. But I think it's been scrubbed from all internet history. In the Trial of Valor, the new Method Guild got there first. World first.
Wait for me. Anything you have, boys.
Last time.
Anything you have. Well,
I was talking to Scripe before this video came out, and I was watching all these clips back and stuff. You guys, if you're curious about this stuff, I recommend you go back and actually watch the raid leadership. And I'm not sure if it's the same is true of Max or not. During these first few Method raids where they join, it is the worst raid leadership in the history of mankind. It is awful. And I messaged Scripe and I was like, dude, have you actually listened to how you raid led at the beginning of like the merger and all this stuff? And he was like, well, no, it's been years. I'm like, you should go back because it is fucking awful. It's so bad. I was like, you can see how far it's come these days. I think there is something to be seen there in how raid leadership has come along since like in the last 10 years especially. But every other comment out of Scripe and Roger is use a Hellstone. Like everybody was carrying like 60 Hellstones with them at all times. And people just saying we should probably use a cooldown. Just dodge the thing. Yeah, don't die. Use everything you have. It's like every bit of raid leadership is just do the thing.
Good memories, guys. Nice at showing Noggy POV as well, guys. He's still in Method now.
At the end of it all, after a decisive victory from their former guild, many of those same
Hey, look, it's Fragment's statement, guys. Hashtag score wasn't the problem.
players would end up right back where they started, with that Method name above their heads, cementing them, though, as the dominant world-first guild.
This is Chris's touch. I didn't even know he put it in there. Because obviously that's what's coming next in the timeline is this, the collapse is coming. This was Chris's touch. I was like, that is perfect. That is absolutely perfect. It's like, okay, they're back on, they're back in charge. They're now coming. And then,
at the end of it,
because we know where the story goes from here. Oh, we have an idea. Although there's a few moments in between. That.
Hey, look, it's Fragment's statement.
Players would end up right back where they started, with that Method name above their heads, cementing them, though, as the dominant world-first guild. At least for now.
For now, guys, for now.
So why, then, did they accept all these players back who had left on...
Yeah, it's in the future, but you know it's coming, right? That's the point. You know it's coming.
mass just 7 months ago. There's a good lesson for us all here. Permanently burning bridges because of a spat or an incident, especially over minor things
that was too bad,
months
actually.
ago,
At the end,
isn't a particularly great idea.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's actually... There's no reason why we wouldn't accept back players into Method for the most part. Like, me personally, I don't really hold, like, grudges, so to speak, or, like, I think it's, like, just in general, I don't really hold, like, a hate or, like, dislike towards people. I think it's, like, really unhealthy just from, like, your own personal mindset side of things. And for the most part, like, most of the players, you can understand why they left, right? Like, originally to join Serenity. It's because, obviously, the raid leader and some of the core... people that are associated with him also, left, and so they thought it was their best chance to obviously still compete at the level they wanted to play at. So, like, no.
Did they put the green lighting on you because you knew this backdrop was going to be used? No. This is done in post-production. Actually, I noticed it as well. Chris was very proud of how he managed to make this work. But, yes, this is all post-production stuff. When I shoot the green screen, I throw ideas at Chris about what I think we should be doing with the background, and without it being too distracting. Like, this look is going away. I don't like it anymore. The idea was that we were doing, like, unsolved mysteries where it'd be, like, suited and stuff. I just don't think it works well for gaming videos. I think it's just a wrong look. So we're going to change this around and modify it a lot. Chris will not let me wear my Meldraxxus top. It is actually banned from the office. Needs a check. Well, I mean, obviously we were like inspired by the unsolved mysteries to talk about this stuff because, again, I make content I'm interested in. That was the whole point of having, like, Patreon and stuff like that, is like I don't want to make just broad appeal videos. I don't find that very interesting. And Chris will know this. He suggested about 1 million videos to me that I'm like, I just don't give a shit about those things. There's stuff I really care about. We tried the trench coat, but it doesn't. It looks like a prop. It looks stupid. I mean, it's just stuff we care. We're interested. It's neither here nor there.
No issue really with, like, the individual
but this
players
look
who left.
will go away.
It's understandable. It obviously really, really sucked, and it made me feel, like, terrible, of course. But it is what it is. Yeah.
Especially when the landscape around those frustrations has changed. Let's take the obvious example: streaming. It is a relatively new hobby, but 7 months later, it was taking off in a big way.
Yeah, this changed so much, guys, over time. You would not believe it. Like, the resistance in the guild to streaming and creating content completely changed. Like, I guess that's also because it was a new guild, right? Like, Method was new at that point in time, but obviously the guys in Serenity adapted to that as well, most of them over time as well. Like, the mindset around streaming and creating content and working with sponsors, working with brands.
I like the way you describe the conversation. Chris, hey, let's try this. No, I don't give a shit. Yeah, but it's in the context of, like, Chris might come to me and say, hey, the new WoW story segment is popping off. Or maybe we should look at the lore or something like that of, say, Mists of Pandaria or something like that. Or there's some drama going on, and I'm like, I just don't care. Like, I really just don't care. Oh, I think the last one was maybe we should do something on horrific visions and, like, look at, like, what they used to be and what they are now. And I was like, that kind of stuff, like the minutiae of World of Warcraft, it just doesn't interest me that much anymore. Like, you can get buried in that stuff, or I was for a long time. And there's a lot of great content creators out there that are doing that. Like, Dan's one of them. Dratty's doing that. There's lots of people who are covering that stuff in a better way with more interest than I am. And I'm like, I don't really care. And I think if I make a video that I don't care about, I think you guys can tell immediately. And then you're like, oh, this is like a video for, like, the WoW main channel video we did where they asked me for, like, a history of WoW raiding, but then it had to be very, very heavily cut to meet, like, what they wanted on the WoW main channel compared to what I would produce. Like, I could do, like, a 12-minute video that's cut down heavily on this one subject. And then you want me to do, like, the entire history of the Race to World First in, like, 11 minutes. To me, it's such a detailed and storied, nuanced journey that, like, I want to spend more time on it. And so it comes across that way.
Like, it took people a lot longer to catch up to what was going on than would have been ideal, obviously, in, like, the raiding scene, but ultimately everyone did. So big shout out, I guess, to some of the guys who were a little bit earlier in the adoption and actually did, want to create content and do streaming and whatnot. Like I said, it wasn't always the easiest time for them back in the old method, like pre-Serenity. Like there was definitely some pretty unfair behavior towards some of those people. Yeah.
And frankly, some of these players were really good at it and enjoyed it and were having a lot of fun with it. So the idea of streaming the race was not as big of a deal anymore. On top of that, you're aiming for world first, the pinnacle of the pinnacle in a game with millions of players.
Exactly. So, and that was it, right? In the end, guys, like that was also a core part of this, right? Like I wanted to make sure that Method was going to be world first, like going forward. Like that was like my ultimate goal, like was the competitive performance of the guild, like, and so that was a big part of it, right? Because if we had the best players, we were able to keep the best players around, and we were also able to, monetize in some way that we could also compensate the players, which means they wouldn't want to leave to other teams, or they wouldn't want to quit the game, or like lots of things really. Like it was just all a case of really trying to make sure that Method was able to support the best players and support the best guild. Yeah, and actually it's worth saying too, guys, I guess, that just in general, I will say that one of the thing I'm probably proudest about with Method, like in everything that we've done over like the 20 years of a Method existing, is that we have been able to support like a lot of people in the WoW scene, and other games too, but mostly the WoW scene, like in regards to like a lot of the biggest streamers that we even see today, for example, on Twitch, they were in Method at some point in their early days, and we were able to obviously help them turn their passion into like their full-time thing, and that's something that I'm really proud of, that we were able to do, and I'm glad that we were able to do that.
Refusing the best of the best, the proven seasoned players, not a particularly good idea. And so these guys were still playing together. They might not have been in the same guild.
How do you guys feel about this?
Mythic
It's like when it's hard with Liquid and Echo because they're playing in obviously different time zones and servers. But if you like have an exodus, we've seen it in Drama Time where people really dislike this idea. But if you have an exodus where your guild has like driven, say, half or a certain amount of members to another guild, like certainly a guild that is competitive with you, but those players are still friends and still playing together all the time, which is what happened here, right? They were still playing together because they're still the best players and they were still friends regardless of what guild they were in. Do you find that as like a negative or a positive? I think it's healthy too. Like that's what came out a lot when we were talking about this, is like we all abandoned Method and we went to Serenity, but the people we were left with, it's not like we hated anybody who was there. Like we didn't hate Perfecto, we didn't hate Justway, we didn't hate Roger Brown, and so we still played together like all the time. And certainly because Legion, when this happened, was M+, right? M+ was now a thing, so people were doing M+ and stuff all the time. Yeah, there's a lot of people who feel like you're betraying something, right? You're a traitor. That's a word that gets thrown around a lot when you play with people from guilds you used to be a part of. And I always find that, like, unless there's something very personal happened, which is a different, I mean, contextually, like if you did something completely horrible to people, and hate, and that's something like that. I guess then there won't be a vid on the second split. There will. We're obviously going to be, there's a few events in Race to World for his history that are between those moments, that I want to look at in more in depth. I certainly want to even spend some time on, I won't spoil them, but there's a few different things that I think were important to the history, or at least that I found interesting, that happened in the Race to World history. But I think we will cover that, the Josh situation at some point. Maybe, maybe not. The only thing I see with that collapse there is, one, it's very sensitive to a lot of people I consider my friends, obviously. But the story is now so... what do you call it? In my old boomer brain, it's still called Chinese Whispers. But that story is so modified from what actually happened at this point that's become sort of the cultural thing. Money telephone thing. It's a muddy story. It's the telephone game. That story is now, in the eyes, like many cases are all different. to what actually happened at the time. And in part of me is like, we should probably correct this, like, and make sure, and maybe be the only channel I think that's actually done as best they can an accurate representation of what happened. So it's like, that's what actually happened. However, there's a big part of me that said no matter what I put into that, whatever people's cemented view on that situation is, would not change regardless. But it is an important thing that happened. You know, that's where my brain is. It's like, it is important that, like, for me anyway, that whole thing happened, and it led to the birth of Echo and the division. Like, the repercussions of that are still felt to this day. Yeah, very sensitive. Yeah, very sensitive. Like, I've met some of the people involved on the victim side of it. I've met them at events and talked to them about it, and I have their contact information. So Chris actually suggested when we talked about it is like, reach out to them first, and are they okay with this? Do they, with this being told? And if they're not, then there's no reason. It's not like it rakes in like millions of views and it's all about getting the stupid streamer shit. But I do find like correcting this history as much as, like, one thing I'm proud of here after listening to this, I was kind of worried that this response might go a different way, but actually everything was pretty accurate. Which is what we worked hard to do. Is like, can we get this as accurate as possible? Besides the airport meeting, which nobody can seemingly agree on what happened there, there's nothing here that seems to be inaccurate at all from both sides, which I'm pretty happy about.
Coming in Legion, a lot of crossover was still happening behind the scenes.
Yeah. Also, I want to just share an observation that I've had as well, guys, that you don't really realize when you're like super young. But it's Preach kind of mentioned a little bit here too. You don't realize that
I do think this is important, by the way, is I think far too many of maybe even you guys or WoW guilds burn bridges way too easily. I think it's like over minor things that maybe said in the heat of the moment and people regret it. I do think that the idea that things can't change and situations alter and change over time is really kind of silly. Like, this is a great example, is like, yeah, it made sense that the guys didn't want to stream and stuff, and then a year later, like, it just become the norm, and people actually found it really fun and enjoyable, and they were like, it was okay, like, this is actually cool, and the situation changed. I wouldn't even say drama queens. I think we all get heated and we all get frustrated, and certainly when one thing that comes out of this video from both sides is perspectives and perception. Is like, on the one hand, a lot of players thought that like SCO was raking in, a huge amount of money, and they were doing all the work, and this isn't okay, and it's going business focused, and that might seem self-serving. Is like, well, it's the way it is now. Are we just going to end up with like, are we paying SCO's rent essentially? Like, what's happening here? Well, SCO's saying that wasn't the case. I was trying to build us into something better, blah blah blah. We'll see where it goes. It's perception at the time. Often I find most big disagreements just come from your perception of what you want to hear. How many times do I say, as not just me, but I'll use me as the example, you put something out, even though it's objectively not what was said, and people hear it a different way. We're never returning to WoW has been the classic one, right? Probably the best example is like, that's never what I said in the history of ever, is like, we're never playing WoW ever again. But if you were to ask a lot of the people who have ever seen that is exactly what they heard, and that is exactly what is cemented into their brains, despite the fact that was never the case whatsoever. And then, obviously get shut down. It's like, well, can you show us where we said that? And they're like, no, not really. I'm like, okay, well, there you go. So falling out over that stuff is very silly. Especially when the situation and environment changes around it. Like, I just find that really just a waste of potentially really good friendships over stuff that isn't necessary. I love the insight in your face. Yeah, when I wrote that for Ian to say, because we were talking before I arrived in Anaheim. Because the whole point is I never told the stream I was going to be there, right? The idea is like, hey, I'm not streaming Monday. I've got something to do. And we were actually flying out to California that night. So when we were talking, I was like, you know what? Why don't we just have it so that you sit there, you're next to me, but the camera will be focused on me, and all I want you to say is, didn't you quit? And then he was like, oh, absolutely. Yeah. I was like, that is perfect. That is perfect. And it works, you know, it was great.
People like that you interact with, like or the industry or like the environment that you operate in, it's a lot smaller than you think. Like the same people will often be around for a long time to come. And so, you know, it's relationships and treating people like well and whatnot is really important. Because you never know like when you're going to be like playing with them again or working with them again. Or they're going to be in method again.
Yakuza is in a couple of minutes, actually.
Joined like 4 times. Like there's so many of like the old guys that you've seen in this video, even like, you know, Nogi, Zalia and co, that are actually back in method now. You know what I mean? So it's really important to keep that in mind.
If I put summer in front of it.
You don't want to burn bridges. You want to treat everyone with respect and treat everyone well as best you can.
And they were more than welcomed back after a little bit of a conversation.
Okay,
It's a good.
I think we're wrapped up here. That's pretty good. I'm happy with that. Expected stuff, but pretty accurate. I'll take that. When you do a piece like that, you want it to come across as accurate to those involved. So I'm really happy with that. That's actually pretty damn good.